Hello teachers and prospective teachers. I am here today to tell you about my experience getting a TESOL and TESL certificate. I'm going to tell you about my experience getting both of these certificates, why I got them, and how getting them has actually contributed to my life as a teacher. So you could better understand whether you should get the certificate or not. So without further ado, hit the subscribe button and let's get started. Let's start off with my TESOL certificate. So what does TESOL stand for? It stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. All right. I got this certificate in Thailand in 2017. So that was almost 5 years ago. I actually completed a 120-hour program with Explore Asia. And afterwards, I began teaching English in Thailand. This was actually a fantastic experience for me, and I really suggest that anybody who wants to go teach English in Thailand to go through Explore Asia. This is completely unsponsored, but I'm just saying that I had a great experience with them, and I'll explain a little bit why in a moment. So there I was, a 21-year-old who just graduated with his bachelor's degree, went off to Thailand. I entered this 3-week course in a place called Hua Hin in Thailand. And basically it was 40 hours a week in class, and then in the final week it was mainly a placement, okay, where you actually practice teaching in a real Thai class. In fact, I still have my textbook right here. So the big selling point for TESOL is the fact that it's a newer conceptualization of English as an additional language pedagogy. So when I took this program, the big selling point for TESOL in comparison to TESOL or TEFL is the fact that it's supposed to encompass all of the teaching or most of the teaching of English as an additional language. See, before this, there was this big dichotomy, and there still exists such a dichotomy between TESOL, teaching English as a second language, which typically happens in countries where English is the dominant language, and TEFL, which is teaching English as a foreign language. And what was explained to me in my TESOL program is that it really fills in the gaps for the things that we don't consider. For example, that English may not be the second language of a student. It may be the fourth or fifth language, or the fact that even though English is not a dominant language in an English as a foreign language context, it could still be a very, very important language in the society. For example, in Thailand, where I completed this program, English is a very, very important language, and it really drives tourism. So treating it just as a foreign language doesn't really make sense. So TESOL is supposed to encompass all of that, and is supposed to be inclusive to all different types of pedagogy in this way. So let's talk about what I actually learned in this course. First of all, we started with some methodology. We learned about some different methods of teaching English, such as the grammar translation technique, the audio-lingual method, task-based learning, and communicative learning. One important thing to know about this program, which was done in Thailand, is that it was very context specific. So everything that they taught us seemed to have a little bit of a twist and was oriented towards the fact that I was learning in this specific context in Thailand, most likely to young learners who were either in primary school or in high school. This kind of dictated the way that the classroom management techniques were explained to us, the material development, the lesson planning, and of course the methods that we used. The method that we were prescribed to use was PPP, and that stands for Presentation Practice Production. So a good amount of this course, this program, was dedicated to actually practicing PPP and trying to envision how we would use it in an actual class. PPP, just to give you an idea, you start by presenting the vocabulary to your students, and then you have a few practice exercises with the students. That could be a worksheet or it could be some sort of task, and then they produce something with the language. That's basically what the methodology is. So this program was very prescriptive and specific to this context. It was specific to the context that you are going to be teaching children probably in public schools in Thailand, and that you will teach them PPP. Even though there were other methodologies that were shown and exposed and presented to us, the main one was PPP, and that's what we practiced. After that, I got a job immediately in a high school in Bangkok, one of the largest high schools, Surasakamon in Dindang, Bangkok. It was a fantastic experience. I loved it. It was very hard work sometimes, but it was a great experience for me. This program prepared me just as much as it could have for such an experience. I mean, when you go into these classes in a lot of Southeast Asian classrooms, you are what we call an edutainer, and that means you are the mix between an educator and an entertainer. A lot of the time you will be, as a novice teacher, you will be teaching speaking or listening. And that is because a lot of the time there will be a Thai teacher who will teach them English, but teach them, grammar, reading, and writing. What you're there to do is to try to get your students to communicate and get them to speak. But in order to do that, you need to be creative and you need to be innovative and engaging. And, a lot of the kind of hype that drives the beginning of your teaching experience could ultimately lead to burnout, which is one thing to be aware of. But in any case, this program prepared me as well as it could for these circumstances when you walk in and there are 60, sometimes 50 or 60 students running around a classroom. There is no perfect recipe nor formula for such a situation. It could be hard work in some of these classrooms. However, it did give me the tools for me to lesson plan and to understand how I could teach English in this specific context. Another thing that was included in this program was classroom management techniques, which I spoke about before. And this is really important as well to make sure that you could exert and maintain control of your classroom. So after this, I came back to Canada. I immediately got a job in Markham, Ontario, teaching at a private school. After that, I went over to Ireland and I got a job as a teacher there. I began working at a university, and then I worked on italki. And I've been working on italki ever since for the past 2 years. So in a nutshell, this TESOL certificate gave me the ability, the employability, to secure 4 different jobs over 3 years. So why on earth did I bother getting a TESL certificate after this? Well, in Canada, there are different rankings, different standards for being an ESL teacher. And I wanted to have the basis, have the education, which could guarantee me as good a chance as possible to be employed in different institutions in Canada through the long term. And if you're from England, if you're from South Africa, if you're from Australia or India, there may be something similar in your context as well. So if you need more information for the Canadian context, I'll put a link in the description below about TESOL Canada. There are 3 standards, and basically my TESOL certificate gave me the standard 3, which it gives me the ability to teach in a lot of different places, such as private institutions. It did not render me certified with TESOL Ontario. okay, which is my part of Canada. And by being part of TESOL Ontario, you have a membership, and this allows you to have a better kind of chance of being employed in Canada, along with access to different workshops and annual conferences. So I entered my TESOL certification program. It was called a TESOL program at Carleton University, and it was completely different from my TESOL program. This program was 2 semesters at a university. You chose 5 courses per semester. It was part of undergrad learning, so it's basically like a victory lap or a 4th year in your bachelor's degree. And it was more focused on applied linguistics and linguistics. So you were able to select a range of different courses in applied linguistics and linguistics. And there were also courses that you had to take. One course I had to take was a practicum. So for this practicum, for the first semester, I was actually a TA for an EAP class at Carleton, so an English for Academic Purposes class. And then I was able to TA and be a teacher's assistant for another one the following semester. This was a dream for me. And there were a range of different opportunities to complete your practicum. So that was one fantastic thing, that instead of in the TESOL certificate program, you started off with your training and then you did your teaching experience. In this situation with the TESOL, you kind of did your training and you did your experience at the same time. So you were able to, go into class and teach, and then come back to your university class and learn more, use that, apply it to your teaching, and the cycle continues. Another course that you were required to take in this program is methodology. Yeah. And similar to what they did in the TESOL course in Thailand, they presented all different kinds of methodology, but ultimately it was context specific. So at a certain point, they said, okay, we're in Canada, we're using the Canadian language benchmark. These kinds of programs, we call them link programs, are very common in Canada. And this is the most common methodology to use for the link programs, which is called TBLT, task-based learning teaching. Yeah. So similar to how presentation practice production was very prominent in Thailand and was kind of the core, the basis of our program over in Thailand, this methodology was provided the basis for our training in my methodology classes at Carleton University for my TESOL. So did this program help me out? Well, yes, I would say that the TESOL certification, both of them helped me out in so many different ways. I think that if I had only taken the TESOL certification, I would have a lot of knowledge and not a lot of practice, meaning that I would have a lot of kind of hypothetical knowledge, but not a lot of like real in-person applicability and experience with that knowledge. Whereas in Thailand with the TESOL, it was immediately like you were thrown into the deep end at the end of the 3 weeks. So you had to kind of sink or swim, right? So I think that was very good for my development. However, the TESOL experience or the TESOL program was a lot less organized. It was a lot less evidence-based and research-backed. So from an academic perspective, the TESOL was much better. It was way more organized, way more coherent, and it didn't feel rushed in any way. You were able to actually learn a little bit of what you wanted to learn. In terms of the TESOL certificate, it helped me directly to get into my master's degree, which I'm currently in. I'm pursuing a master's in applied linguistics at York University, which, going back to the Canadian TESOL standards, this will actually give me the qualifications to be at the highest standard by completing this program. It also gave me the qualifications to register with TESOL Ontario. So now I'm a member of TESOL Ontario, and this is really helpful for employability and again for training and professional development purposes. With all being said and done, I think that I got really lucky. I think that everything that happened the perfect way for me. I was able to start off with, I guess, a cheaper certificate that allowed me to jump right into the workforce almost immediately after it was done, and to meet fantastic people and to gain a lot of experience in a short amount of time. This allowed me to be employed at least for a few years until I wanted to take the next step, which obviously required that I went back to university for a year, but this allowed me to become a lot more academically inclined and to be a lot more confident and focused with my pedagogy and my practice. So that had a fantastic impact on me as a teacher. Both of them have supported each other. There are different things that TESOL is good for and different things that TESOL is good for. Before we finish up, I want to talk about how this has affected my experience on italki and just some other things that are important for you to know. So the first thing for italki, having this certification has qualified me to be a professional teacher. So all I really needed was the TESOL certificate to be a professional teacher. That allows me to get more money. It's more attractive to the majority of students. However, the TESOL certificate actually gave me the knowledge to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And that has driven the quality of my lessons through the roof. Had I never taken this TESOL program, I don't think I would be the teacher I am today. It has really influenced my teacher knowledge and my teacher identity and beliefs. Just a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, not all TESOL or TESL programs look like this. Not all TESL programs are 2 semesters long in a university. Not all TESOL programs are 120 hours fast-tracked through a 3-week program in Thailand. They could take all different shapes and sizes. Another thing, certification does not guarantee your employability, and it does not guarantee you to actually be a fantastic teacher overall. I mean, at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who could rely on their certification as a kind of a crutch, something that gives them an excuse to like sit back and to avoid developing personally and professionally. The most important thing to me at the end of the day is the experience, but I cannot deny the fact that these 2 programs have been incredibly important for my development. What about you? Tell me about your experience. I hope that this has really helped you out. If you have any questions about these programs, please just leave a comment below or reach out to me. As always, if you ever want to sit down and ask me any questions about teaching on italki or teaching in general, please just book a consultation through the link below, through the Calendly link. I'd be happy to sit down and chat with you. Subscribe to the channel, and until next time, keep smiling.